Hey, Miami sports fans. Stop by Canesware today at 2655 South University Drive in Davie, Florida. And check out their awesome merchandise selection of your favorite South Florida sports teams. From the Miami Dolphins, Hurricanes, Heat, Marlins, Florida Panthers, and Inter Miami, they've got it all. Celebrate your favorite team and show off your fandom with their beautiful team starter jackets, killer-looking helmets, team jerseys, cool shirts, and more. And if you're out of town or out of state, no worries. Go to caneswear.com and find everything they have on their site. Select what you want, and they will ship your gear to you. Anything over $99 is shipped for free. Don't wait. Stop at Caneswear.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to Fins Talk OT. I am your host, Bret Legassi, and no, you are not seeing things. Do not adjust your computer or your device. I am back for the second week in a row, and I am joined by Greg Miney once again. Quite a few of you were very excited and really enjoyed everything he brought up, everything he taught you guys, which I'm telling you, there's a lot to learn. And he even had you guys on Real Talk, which is great. So, Greg, how you doing tonight?
Doing good. It's been an interesting week for me work wise. So, I mentioned this on Steve's show on Tuesday.
Right.
You know that it's a good distraction to talk about something I'm passionate about in the Dolphins, and the next 2 days did not get any better. So it's just been one of those weeks. So let's get going. This is going to be good.
Sounds like my week.
Oh, it's just brutal. I don't know what the hell was going on, but everybody I was meeting with too were saying the same thing. It was just like, what a crappy week this has been.
So saying the same thing over and over. So kind of like Dolphin fans and Greer and Ross that were almost there if it wasn't for injuries. It just never ends.
Never ends.
So last week we got to talk a lot about the talk really revolved around quarterback, but you touched on a lot of different things. And just to recap a little bit, we talked how the team has built in your point of view of where some of the shortcomings were, and you talked about impact players and largely not drafting impact players around Tua early on, and it took them until 2022 to do so. And into his defense, he played better, put up better numbers with better talent around him. And then you touched on what you gave a completely different idea and concept for many people about what a game manager is. And then you touched on running back just a little bit, and that was a whole topic I know you've been dying to get into. And where you, like you said, offensive line, the difference between the best offensive lines and the worst offensive lines is minimal, and that's just the way offensive line is today. And you've mentioned to me many times that running back needs to be another option here. And we have talked about that we could upgrade the depth at receiver, because outside of Tyreek and Waddle, it's all just kind of just blah. Every single one of those guys just a jag. So with the draft coming up, we know that Mike McDaniel has looked at running backs in every draft he's been a part of with the Dolphins. He's kicked the tires on running backs. He's looked at them, and he's wanted to draft one, and I think he does want to upgrade that. So with that said, Greg, I'm going to let you have the floor on this one, because I know you want to rant on this one.
This offense to excel needs a threat at running back. One of the things that's, that few people realize is Mostert had more rushes than, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had receptions combined. He touches the ball almost 250 times. Okay?
Which is a lot for him, and that's the most he's had.
Which is a lot for him, but it's pretty standard amongst a running back. And when you have a running back that's going to touch the ball that often, you want the best possible outcomes. Mm-hmm. And Raheem Mostert, his entire career, has just been a guy. He's been cut multiple times. Some really smart coaches have looked at him and said, we need to get better than him. San Francisco is one of them. San Francisco basically got rid of him to get Christian McCaffrey because they knew that there were parts of that offense, that San Francisco offense, that Mostert and the running back was holding back. Okay.
Jeff Wilson as well, remember.
Jeff Wilson as well. All right. You have, when you're going to run the ball that often, when you're going to feature a running back as much as this offense wants to feature the running back, you need to get better production out of it, in my opinion. And in my mind, it's not just my opinion. Shanahan basically did the same thing. He basically got rid of him. Now, McDaniel brought him to Miami because he's familiar with the offense. He's familiar with what he wants to run. There's nothing wrong with that. Okay, Mostert is a good second, third back if you want to go that route with him, but he can't be your bell cow. He can't be a 250 touch a year guy.
No,
you need to get better than that. And the only reason why he's the third option on offense behind Hill and Waddle right now, in my opinion, is because the fourth and fifth option just aren't that good.
No.
Yeah.
And last year, to your point a little bit, Achane missed a lot of the season. Izukama missed a lot of the season. And I'm not saying these guys will or won't be studs, but they were definitely going to be focusing the offense. We saw that, and then they were hurt. Izukama missed the rest of the year, and then Achane missed a chunk. So, like that, they weren't trying to make Mostert a starter. And just real quick, Greg, before you get back into it, when we talked on this show, when they signed Mostert, I had said they signed Mostert because they were not a big fan of, or McDaniel did not like the Edmonds signing. And I really feel he's like, just give me Mostert, we'll make it work. And then he wanted to add other backs, and it just wasn't working.
Well, and he's adding all the same type of backs too. Okay.
Yeah.
Mostert's a speed guy. He's not going to run people over. He's not going to get you the tough yards. Achane, same thing. Speed guy. He's not going to get you the tough yards when you need them. Okay. Wilson is Jeff Wilson. All right. He
runs way too high. It fumbles a lot.
He runs way too high, and he might have a little bit of power to him, but he's Jeff Wilson. Okay. There are dozens of him in the league. You know what I mean? He's the third running back for a reason.
Yeah.
And there were, like I said, 250 times essentially Mostert touched the ball in 15 games. All right. That doesn't even count the two that he missed. Achane touched the ball almost 150 times. There's 400 touches in an offense that ran about between 1,000 and 1,100 plays for the year. Okay. So about 40%, 35-40% of your touches are two guys. And Achane in his role, I'm fine with. But you need that number one. You need to get better there. And Mostert finished 10th in the league or something like that, and he had the most touchdowns. But did he make a memorable play to you last year? I don't remember one. I can't point to one. Achane, I can point a couple to.
Yeah.
Okay. Achane, has that extra gear, but the bigger picture, the bigger issue is the entire room of Miami's running backs, in that they're basically, like I said, they're all the same. Mm-hmm. People complain that McDaniels gets away from the run or doesn't run in short yardage and things like that.
That's where I wanted to go next.
Yeah, I was like, well, who's going to run the ball there? Who do you have confidence that's going to basically meet a linebacker in the hole and fall forward for 2 yards? I don't have one in Miami. Mostert's never been that guy. If he was that guy, he would have played more earlier on. Okay. He wouldn't have been a subject of somebody cutting him all the time. Okay. He's 32 years old.
Yeah. And I'm pretty certain he was on a pitch count for a lot of his time in Miami. because it seemed like they would get away from him. Okay, they had a set amount of touches, and you've talked about that before. Like they don't want to give these guys too many touches because they know they're going to break down. And Mostert's injury history, I'm almost guaranteed McDaniel, who likes to protect his players, put him on a pitch count. And it's like, well, I don't want to run him, and I want to run between tackles because we lose Mostert, we lose a good chunk of our run game. Because, like you're saying, and just so for people watching, he's not like trashing Mostert as a terrible back. He's just saying relying on Mostert to be a playmaker consistently is just not it. We need a stud.
A consistent playmaker, a consistent third threat, a consistent option that the defense has to game plan for. Mm-hmm. You know, the secret sauce in San Francisco in a way is McCaffrey. All right. McCaffrey, you know, he's the person that the defense is trying to stop. In Miami, it's Tyreek Hill. So if you had a very good running back, a running back that fell forward, all right, you know, for an extra couple yards every time they got hit, Miami's running back might lead the league in rushing.
That's true.
All right. You know, Christian McCaffrey in the Super Bowl touched the ball 30 times. He had 22 rushes and 8 receptions. Miami doesn't have a guy who could do that. Mm. All right. Miami doesn't have a guy I'd want to do that. And his stat is, as San Francisco's offense is at the skill position, McCaffrey is the one that makes it all work. He's the one that everything's built around. And I'm not saying that Miami needs to get a Christian McCaffrey, all right? There's only one of those in the league, right? Yeah. But there are at least 10 to 12 running backs in the league I'd rather have than Mostert. Give me one of them. Find me one of them. Find me that guy who will take the ball 20 times in a game where you need him to take the ball 20 times to win the game.
So we talk about the run game. We know people have talked about the run game and how they have talked about they stutter on they get away from the run too often. And yeah, you can make an argument about that, but it also is a clear showing that people just don't understand how the game flow goes. You can't just clear running downs. If fans are calling run the football, I mean the defense is thinking the same thing. And like you said, who's going to take on the linebacker one-on-one? And remember, when you are running in the middle, you got a tight box. Everybody takes on a blocker. There's still going to be a free man. So the running back likely has to make his own block, BYOB, which is not bring your own beer. It's bring your own block.
Yeah, be your own blocker. You're going to have to take that hit in the hole and fall forward. You got to get that 1 yard, to get that 2 yards, to extend those drives. You have to do it.
And you've said before that Tyreek Hill is part of the reason that the run game goes, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The defense is scared to death of getting beat deep by Hill and Waddle. They fear that speed on the outside. So they're, some teams coverages and stuff like that are based on man coverage. Mm-hmm. So they want to play man. They want to have the safeties at back deep and things, to affect Hill and Waddle. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the teams that play zone, that want to play like a cloud coverage in the back, a cover 4, a deep cover 2, a wide cover 2, however you want to say it, those are the teams that basically don't have enough people in the box. And those are the teams to where you can outflank in the running game. And the point that I keep making is, except in obvious rundowns, the defense and the defensive coordinator is like, give Mostert the ball. They don't fear him like they do the other two players. And that might be justified, but if there was just this much fear, and Achane brought that, okay, because of the speed. But if there was just a little bit more fear of the running attack gashing them, that I think that would open up the passing game and make Tua's life a little bit easier as well. not as many cloud coverages and not as many, inside out or over the top, bracket type coverages on Hill. He should have more space to throw into on the timing routes too, if we can just get that extra player to come down a little bit closer to the box.
Agreed. Now, with that said, would you look at running back early in the draft, or would you just look at with the success of, let's just say, the Shanahan system? We know it's very friendly blocking system. Even though the passing attack is more the Mike Martz system, you see quite a bit of variations of the Shanahan rushing attack and the gimmicks and everything that they do, the motions and all, which is another thing that also helps them a lot too. Do you think Miami should target a back early or just play the board?
I don't know if I'd say target a back, but I would not be opposed to them drafting a running back first or second round this year. If
one's
they,
worthy of it.
What's that?
If you're saying if there's one worthy of that pick.
If there's one worthy of it, absolutely. And it got to them, absolutely. They need that third option. They need that third threat. And in my opinion, the best way to make the offense better is to get a little more physicality at running back and make somebody, go old school, a bell cow, right? Somebody that can be on the field 75% of the snaps, be a threat in both the running and the passing game, and bring a little bit of physicality to the running game, because Miami fell short converting third and shorts last year. It was a problem down for them. Mm-hmm. They tried to pass their way and gimmick their way through that quite a bit.
It just doesn't work.
If they could have extended a couple of those drives, let's just say one extra drive or two extra drives a game, this offense would have been phenomenal. It would have been incredible how much more productive it would have been just converting, 25% of those.
Yeah.
Just give me a little bit more. You're never going to get all of them. Something's going to happen, whatever. But just give me one extra conversion a game. Just one.
Yeah.
And let's see what happens. All right. That's the point of that dude, that guy at running back. You need to have something like that. Just extend the drives. It makes everybody better. It makes everybody better.
And the offensive line gets better. And
absolutely.
It makes everybody better, just like everybody following the show, watching us and all. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Mm-hmm. California, Raphael, Steve, everybody, thank you.
Yes.
We appreciate it. All the comments keep it flowing. And California, Bo Jackson, Herschel Walker would be nice to have.
And by the way, for people that said hi to me last week, I didn't see your comments because I was on the wrong tab. I'm a little bit, smarter this time, so I apologize. And how y'all doing?
It's our fault. We forgot to fill them in. So now you touched on something that's been like near and dear to my heart here with the power. So something about this offense, and you said a couple things with this. They had the same kind of running backs. Well, they have the same kind of wide receivers. And I keep saying it. Our offensive line is soft. It's been soft. That's the one thing I would change about the offensive line is get more meat aggressive players, and which we had in Williams, and I liked it. But regardless, I've always wanted a mean running back. Like I was a teenager watching Ricky Williams, and I grew up hearing the stories about Larry Zonka, and I watched, the great backs. I was a teenager watching Marshall Faulk, who in this system was amazing. And I think I feel like the one thing lacking from this offense is physicality, and that receiver and and the running back position. And I really think that if the Dolphins change that, and Mike McDaniel was big on physicality at both. He wants his receivers to block. He wants his running back to bring its own block. He wants that physicality. He still likes the physicality, but he loves speed. But he has said in his pressers that he likes guys that are tall, big, and they talk about offensive line. Oh, you need the smaller guys. He goes, well, if you could be 6'7", 350 and run, 4 or 5, if someone could develop that, that'd be great. But he said it's just because there's like, oh, you need to be athletic doesn't mean you need to be small. And every back that they've met with in college has fit the build of a running back that could be a bell cow. So you see what McDaniel wants to do, and I'm not sure if Greer agrees. But which is why the physicality part is what we're lacking at receiver. I would love Brian Thomas at 21 because of that. I know it's not a running back, but he helps the run game because he's physical. He loves the block, and then he offers that ability on the edge. What do you?
So I don't disagree. There to be successful outside zone running team, okay, you need physicality on the edge. You need it at tight end. You can kind of get it at fullback if they're lead blocking. But a wide receiver that can block on the edge makes a ton of difference in the outside zone. It makes a ton of difference. All right. We can talk about being more physical in the interior 5 of the offensive line. If you're going to run Achane, all right, you're probably not wanting them to run too much between the tackles anyway. You want to get them on the flanks.
Yeah.
Get physicality on the outside. Do that with running back and Berrios and Craycraft. They're nice players. They're complimentary players, but they're not going to be blocking anybody. I don't mind Durham Smythe as a blocker. I'd like to see him a little bit more physical.
Yeah.
But he's not too bad. But getting somebody
you can live with him.
You could live with him. He's never going to be a pass catching threat,
no.
or anything like that. But in this offense, you really don't need one. Not at that position. At that position, I want him to block his tail off, and I want him to basically set the edge so that I can get Achane and Mostert outside where I can use their speed. All right, and any other running back that we get out there. So, but a physical wide receiver, somebody that can go over the middle and basically post up and make some plays there. A physical running back. If you want to compare this team to like the greatest show on turf, okay?
Hate that.
Speed. Well, basically that was a speed team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. They had some physicality to it. They had some things, along that, some physicality. I mean, Orlando Pace, Hall of Famer. Okay. He's pretty good. Okay?
They had some mean players up front.
Yeah, no, they had some players, but they also had a 280-pound tight end that basically just mauled people. All right. They didn't throw to him maybe 20, 30 times a year. But
Maliuna.
Yes, exactly. But man, he could block and he could perform on the edge. But the reason I bring up the greatest show on turf or whatever, right? That was basically a speed team that played indoors in a division that wasn't northern, right? I mean, Miami.
You're right.
Is a speed team that once you get into the weather and into some of the elements, isn't really adapted to it. No. They need to get a little bit better at it. They don't need to fully turn and be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust team. I'm not saying that, but they need to up their physicality just enough to where Kansas City doesn't happen, to where they have at least a hope of an answer. All right. Because in December, in this division that they're playing in, you're going to have to go to New York, Boston, Buffalo. You're going to have to play at least 1 or 2 games up there at a critical time of the year. Yeah. And you can't just say, okay, it's snowing today or the wind's blowing, and all of a sudden you can't run your offense.
Yeah.
You have to have at least an option of doing some physicality.
And that you're like you did it last week and you're doing it this week. It's freaking awesome. I'm not the best host. Greg makes you look better as a host because like you're taking things. Maybe it's because we had some conversation before, but you're like taking things right into where I wanted to go because you mentioned a tight end and blocking outside, and and Steve was trying to steal my thunder with Jonnu Smith, and I am of the belief that Jonnu Smith helps the rushing attack more than he does the passing attack, simply because he's a better blocker in space than Durham Smythe. And I did like the rookie tight end. I thought he showed flashes as a blocker and meanness as a blocker, and I hope he sticks because I'd like to see him develop. But Jonnu Smith offers really good movement in space, and that's something I wanted to see.
Yes.
Now, where you're getting that with the Rams, now you mentioned that once Trent Green said that about like that's the March system, it's that timing, it's that spot throwing, and that's a conversation for another day. We know it works with the speed, but and you mentioned the tight end physicality that helps. If you look at the Patriots, me and a friend of mine have gone back and forth. Now he has experience recruiting and coaching in college ball at D1, and we talked about like building offenses and how the Patriots always had physicality at tight end. Guys who are a little bit of a dual threat, always physical though. And their run game was always physical. But go back and look at their history of wide receivers. They weren't big. Tom Brady's never had big receivers other than Randy Moss. So they would still run the football, and in the cold weather, like not fast, so to speak, but smaller receivers, yet they still ran the football when it mattered most.
So as somebody who basically grew up in the North, okay, I played college football in the North. I coached, in the North, okay. November, December run comes around, you're basically, if you don't have a rocket for an arm at quarterback, all right, you are basically adjusting to the wind conditions and trying to make that work. But you also have to have the right type of wide receivers. And New England with Brady never had, outside of Randy Moss, big, fast, wide receivers, and basically, that frame of a wide receiver. Devontae Parker going up there. There's a reason why he was up there, is because he had some physicality to him and he can make plays in basically all weather. But one of the other things that they had, and they always had one of these guys, was somebody that had really good footwork that could get in and out of breaks quickly. All right. Maybe not the fastest guy.
Right.
You're talking Edelman, you're talking Welker, you're talking those types of guys. All right. They're sure-footed. Okay. Yeah. They can run basically good routes in any field condition and any weather. Okay. Because they're sure-footed. Braxton Berrios is a lot like that. All right. Waddle is kind of a speed guy. He doesn't really cut as well as probably he should. Hill he's pretty good at it too. But, guys like Berrios, all right, they basically are sure-footed. They don't slip. They don't fall. They don't, they don't have to slow down to get in and out of cuts. And while they might not be fast, that's the kind of offense you need on a bad field. Yeah. That's the kind of player you need on a bad field. You need that type of person. But the physicality at tight end is yes.
Yeah.
All right. That is something that they've always had. It to me is the biggest Bill Belichick trait on offense.
It really is.
Is that guy at tight end who can block and who can make plays down the field. I mean, Gronk's going to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
All right. He is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And we'll probably never see another complete tight end like him in a very, very long time, in my opinion.
Those guys are rare. Those guys are rare. Guys like him are not easy to come by.
No.
And he wasn't even healthy half his career, and he still put up ridiculous numbers. It's just insane.
ridiculous numbers, and he had an incredible catch radius.
Mm-hmm.
And when Tom Brady needed a bailout guy toward the end, it was Gronk.
Yeah.
Well,
Gronk didn't have? Gronk didn't have the angle. You're welcome, Dolphin fans.
Yeah, he's not the best in prevent defense, but anyway. But you have to understand, New England with Tom Brady knew they were going to be playing December and January games in Boston.
Yep.
And you had to build your team sort of around that, right? Around the weather, around the conditions. And part of the genius in Belichick, in my opinion, it was picking those types of guys who could play in that type of weather effectively. All right. Miami can be the fastest show in the South. They can be, whatever you want to say in Miami. But, man, you better play a lot of games in Miami in December and January if you want that to hold.
You better get home field advantage.
Yeah. If not, look where all the good teams are in the AFC right now, essentially. The teams that you're going to have to go through.
We just had to play in a negative degree game, right?
What's that?
We just had to play in a negative degree game in Kansas City.
Correct. Kansas City, but Baltimore, the weather was crappy. Buffalo, the weather wasn't great. You got to probably go through Cincinnati.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Pittsburgh, you can't ever count Pittsburgh.
Cleveland.
Out. Yeah. I mean,
Cleveland's pretty dang good, too.
Yeah.
All right.
The only if New York or the Patriots get back into it.
Correct. And then you have, the Southern teams that right now are just behind the Northern teams in a way. Yeah. All right. Maybe Houston does something and maybe you can play in a dome. Okay.
Or Indianapolis. Yeah. Jacksonville.
Or Indianapolis or something like that. But those are a step below those other teams that we just mentioned. Mm-hmm. So if you're not going to be home field advantage, if you're Miami, get at least a handful of guys who can play in some bad weather. And right now, they don't have that running back. I don't think they have that wide receiver that I would count on. Waddle, as good as he is, you saw him try to run in Kansas City. Okay, he might have been hurt, but still, he's never played in the cold.
No. And he's fast. Cold negates speed a lot of times, too.
Cold negates speed. Fast guys don't like cold.
Yeah, right. It's sloppy field conditions. Like it's hard, and it's hard for Waddle. A guy like Waddle is so smooth and so fast. It's really hard. He hits the second gear it so easily, but it's so hard for him to slow down because he is so fast. And it's not really a knock, but that's like a disadvantage for him in a sense.
Yeah, and he doesn't trust his footing to make the cuts at the speed that he should be making them at. All right.
Yeah, he's working on it, but it's a process.
It's a process, and it's not something you can work on right now. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just it's practicing in it every day. It's going outside and understanding what's going on. It's practicing on a rock hard field. All right. We used to when I was coaching. Okay, if late in the year, or actually anytime during the year, but especially late in the year, if a wide receiver fell running a route because he slipped, all right,
push-ups,
he did a gasser.
Ah.
All right, you were not allowed to fall because it was up to you to basically manage your speed and your quickness and manage your steps coming in and out of breaks. And if we noticed that you were slowing down, you ran a gasser. All right. So you had to be conscious of the fact that this is how you run on this type of field. All right. And the Dolphins, because of the division that they're in, you're going to have to play up north.
Yep.
And if you're not going to be the number one seed, if you got to go to the AFC Championship game in a northern field, let's get some physicality at certain positions to give us a fighting chance.
That's something that I've noticed with this Dolphins team in general. built under Greer and other staffs before, and I'll say since Sperano and company left, because when Sperano was fired, when Sperano was there, I felt like there was some physicality to this team. But I've always said I would love to have seen Sperano with a quarterback, because I used to like, I'm over Sperano, who's too old school, this and that. And then I realized, if he had a quarterback, the way that team was physical, maybe they would have done something. But then, like, as time went on, they got finesse, and then they got really finesse with Philbin, where he kicked out everybody that had that dog, had that fight, that physicality, and it got soft. And they really have not built the physicality back, offense or defense. It's something that's been frustrating to me. And I grew up in Delaware, where Ravens became a team when I was a kid, and Eagles were the Eagles. I mean, these
Right.
guys play in the cold. They're physical. And I watched the Panthers and the Buccaneers win in Philadelphia to go to the Super Bowl. And they beat really good Philadelphia Eagle teams and out-physicaled them. And these are Southern teams that are not used to the cold. They went to Philly and won. And it's something like, but they played physical. That's how they did it. And it's like Miami in this division, I've said it for years, they need to get physical if they want to compete for this division because of the cold and everything, and that's why they struggle in December. Where do you think they need to go? Like, what do you think puts them in contention this offseason, like in the draft and the rest of the offseason? Like the OBJ, does that even put them in contention, or do you think they need to go a different route?
I really want some more physicality. I would love to have a physical wide receiver that can block. I would love to have a physical tight end that can block. I'm hoping Smith can do that. I really am. All right. And I really think we need that running back. All right. We need that. It's not a plow horse. I still want speed. I still want athletic ability. But you need somebody 220 pounds, 5'10", who can run some people over.
You're talking like a Nick Chubb, a guy who still has explosive power.
Yeah.
Not that those guys are easy to find, but
somebody like that, somebody with a little bit more physicality. And I think Mostert will blow up, and Achane will have a great September and October and November and things like that. But then it slows down with the weather in December. And one of the things I'm really looking toward this year is what the schedule is going to look like, because Miami had such a favorable schedule last year. All of those home games at the end of the year,
man,
it's not going to happen again.
And they're going to have to go north. Rivals against the Bills at home, that's frustrating.
They're going to have to go north a couple of times in December, maybe January, and they got to translate. It has to translate to that, because those games are going to be so important for them. And I don't know if they're good enough right now to win the division, but they should be good enough to play for that 5th, 6th, 7th seed. If they don't win the division, they should be good enough for a wild card. And
should be.
And those last couple, those last 3 or 4 games in December, if you're on the road 2 or 3 of them, you got to win.
Yeah,
you got to win. And you know the way the NFL's set up, that it's going to be against division teams, and it's probably going to be against at least one other team that's fighting for the same playoff spot that you are.
I mean, we finished up with the Ravens last year, the Bills, Dallas before that.
Yeah, Dallas.
So you had some playoff games, some pre-playoff games right there to finish the season.
And 4 of the final 5 games were at home.
Yeah,
it's just not going to happen anymore.
And a losing record in those games, which is frustrating.
Yeah. It's just. You have to be able to translate your offense when the conditions aren't favorable.
Yeah.
And I thought it was pretty obvious last year at Baltimore, at Kansas City, where they weren't the greatest conditions, that the team just wasn't ready for it. It wasn't built for it. And, I don't see the vast improvement on it so far this year. Hopefully they kill the draft. All right. They
but
only got a handful of picks.
they got to get lucky.
But those first two picks have got to hit. And I don't want to say you got to hit a home run with them, but man, a home run would be nice.
Have somebody fall, or honestly, I know this isn't popular. We only got so many picks, this and that, but you know what? At this rate, Miami needs some impact players. So if they have to trade up, trade up. I know you only got so many picks. You can use next year's picks, some players here and there. But like, if you had to trade up, do it. If you have a player that someone's interested in trading for that will help that trade, do it. I mean, because someone like I keep thinking, my opinion, I think Brian Thomas is probably the best option for Miami because I know wide receiver isn't the definite need, but I think I don't address the draft as need. I want to go with the impact player. And I think Brian Thomas comes in, he offers some physicality. He's a tone setter. And he's got that. I know it's Louisville's, and we were just talking about cold weather games, but he's physical and he wants to block. He wants to be in it. Yeah. And I think a guy like that can really help our offense. And then, as far as running back goes, I really do think like Mike McDaniel can find a back in day 3 pretty easy that fits his system, that can have success in his system, and that has that physicality. And I know he's looking for it because every back he's kicked the tires on has been physical. And it's not that he doesn't want Mostert; he just wants to complement the running back.
If he likes somebody in the 3rd or 4th round, and Miami doesn't have a pick in either of those rounds, do something to move up.
Yeah.
All right. It is too critical of a position, especially I think this year, for them to, I don't want to say ignore, but to basically put on a back burner.
Mm-hmm.
I for this offense to take the next step, they need better running backs. Or a better number 1 running back.
Now, we see Green Bay has a good run game with they had 2 good running backs, and that's all changed up. But they had 2 good running backs, mainly Aaron Jones, and then they moved on. And you see other teams have had success without a good running back, like the Chiefs. But we all know why.
Correct.
Their quarterback. So, in my opinion, I think what you're saying is we need a running back because our quarterback isn't necessarily the guy to scare defenses and for defenses to say we got to back out. And I really do think that a running back does help him because he's always had a running back. In college, he had a run game. He had a running back so it's not really far from it. And what McDaniel has done is what we said last week. He's replicated what he had in Alabama to a point. But now the run game is kind of lacking there. And I feel like Tua needs a running back he trusts to feel confident in, especially when they run RPO.
Well, again, there's going to be approximately 400 touches by the running backs. All right, next year. All right. If Achane stays healthy, he's probably going to get closer to 200, but you still have 200 other touches to do. All right, to account for. We need to maximize those, and we need, if you trust Waddle and Hill on the outside to create separation and get open, you don't need to put 5 people out in a route combination all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Having a running back that can block is only going to help Tua. Yeah. Having a tight end stay in and block is only going to help Tua. All right. Miami needs to consider running their offense a little bit differently to let Hill and Waddle cook a little bit more, in my opinion. And I don't trust Mostert to block. I don't trust Achane to block.
Yeah.
It's a
lot to ask for them.
Yeah, they can keep Smith in. I'm fine with that. If they get into, or Smith and Smythe, all right, they can keep both of those in. All right. As a tight end, let your wide receivers cook. But the main thing is just maximizing the touches. You know, that your number one running back is going to touch the ball approximately 20% of your plays. All right. You know, maybe even a little bit more than that. Get better at it.
Yeah.
All right. You know, Mostert scored 18 touchdowns. That's great. All right. I could have given that ball to 15 other guys in the league, and they probably would have scored just as many.
That's the frustrating part. Like, well, he scored so many touchdowns. Well, yeah, I mean, like a lot of those were helped by the system. It were schemed up. A lot of the big runs by Mostert were schemed up. That he had the speed to get to the edge. Yeah, but that's part of why they schemed it for him to do that.
Yeah. So, and I'm just, a lot of people have minimized the impact of running back in today's NFL. It's running back by committee. It's this, it's that. You know, we can get by with having a mid running back. Mm-hmm. I just think that if you don't have a incredible stud at quarterback, you better have a above average, really good running back to help that quarterback out. And again, I don't, Tua, he led the league in passing. He's really accurate. He can throw the ball, but he's not a guy that at least yet, that I would consider great or elite. Mm-hmm. All right. He's hovering around that number 10 spot in my mind.
And
all right.
To prove your point real quick, Saquon Barkley with the Giants, Derrick Henry in Tennessee. Without those guys, the offense falls apart. No matter who's at quarterback. Tannehill came in, he was a little bit more consistent than who's the quarterback there? Mariota. But they still did very well with Tannehill, but Derrick Henry was the offense for the most part.
They went to an AFC championship game when Tannehill was throwing 15, 17 passes a game in the playoffs.
He had
they went on the road. They went on the road into 2 cold weather stadiums and basically said, Derrick Henry, be you. All right. Yep. Basically that was how they got there. Saquon Barkley, with Jones at quarterback, won a playoff game last year, mm-hmm. or 2 years ago now. Yeah. All right. I mean, they still matter.
Yeah.
They still matter. And like I said, if you don't have one of those top 4 or 5 quarterbacks, you need a running back to take that pressure off. And right now, I don't think Miami has that. I actually know Miami doesn't have that. And if we're going to try to win playoff games on the road in January, going north, we need to have a couple players that can bring a little physicality, that can run straight up and down, and that basically wind doesn't matter, cold doesn't matter, field doesn't matter. We still need to be we'll never be as effective because we're just not built that way, but we still need to have some type of effectiveness in offense, something that we can fall back on, if nothing else.
Agreed.
And I mean, did anybody really think that we were going to play well, on offense in Kansas City? I mean, in your heart of hearts, did you think in that environment that Miami was going to score 20 plus points in that game? I didn't. All right.
That was a frustrating part.
and I'll be completely honest, and forthright, right? I like betting. Okay. I bet NFL games and sucked last year during the regular season. I was pretty good in the playoffs, even though I never bet Miami games. I would have put a lot of money on Kansas City in that game to cover.
I'm going to tell you again, guys, thanks for tuning in with us this long. Please like, share, subscribe. But I seriously, when I found out the temperature, I was like, "Oh, this is over." Now the game was a little bit tighter than I expected, but that someone forgot to tell Patrick Mahomes that weather was bad and cold.
Well, but he's played in it before. I mean, This is his sixth straight, AFC Championship game. He's played in Kansas City in the cold and things like that. He
and
knew
he
what
has
to
the arm.
expect.
And he has the arm to make up for a lot.
He has the arm, but just practicing in it and getting used to it and things like that, you just knew it was going to be such a shock to the Miami team, and they're just not built that way. No, okay, if that game was in Miami, I'd have felt pretty good about it. All right, they had a shot. They could do some things. All right, but you gotta. One of the things that I was told as a young coach, the really good teams can beat you different ways.
Yeah.
Okay. Miami, I don't know if they have more than a couple ways of beating you. And it's a lot has to do with the way the roster's set up and the skill positions on offense and some of the back seven lacking, I would say, on the defense. All right. There are holes on this team that basically you can only cover up for so much, and they tend to start getting exposed toward the end of the year. And more than the injuries, more than anything like that, it was shown last year in December and January, in my opinion, that teams started to understand where the holes were, and they started to exploit them. And everything just got a little bit harder.
Yeah.
Okay. Because Miami could really only beat you in a handful of ways when you look at Kansas City and Miami's window's this big, Kansas City's is this big.
Yeah.
They can win you, do things on offense and defense to really influence the outcome of the game. Miami's was just much narrower. And when you start playing in adverse conditions, that even gets a little bit more narrow, and we just need to expand that window a little bit more. And that's where I'm hoping that some help comes in the draft. And I'm actually looking forward to some post June 1st free agent signings as well.
Yes.
I'm thinking that they're going to have some money available, and they're going to be able to do some things there. And
quite a bit of money is supposed to open up after June, post June 1st.
Correct. Once the X's contract comes off and stuff like that. So there's some opportunity. There's some opportunity here to tweak this roster and give me a little bit more hope going into the season than I currently have. If the draft works, if we do some smart things there, we can make some noise.
And what I'm really hoping is, and I'm not going to hold my breath here, I'm really hoping that Greer is giving McDaniel more say this year with the roster. Because last year it was reported that McDaniel wanted Achane in the second round. Greer said no. Greer took Cam Smith. Cam Smith sat all year. And then they drafted Achane, and Achane looked like a pretty good rookie right away. Looked like a pretty good piece. And I said it when we drafted him. I said it before we drafted him, that, hey, Achane would be a good guy, a good, third target, be to me, an Alvin Kamara type, not comparing the style of play, but just that role. And I was like, he'd be a perfect, playmaker, the kind of guy that comes in, be your typical third down back, like a Brian Westbrook, just the guy that comes in. And then he could also churn out some tough yards. People don't really realize it. I compared him mainly to James White from the Patriots, who could do a little bit of everything and has to be accounted for. And I think that's what they were trying. And it seems like every time McDaniel wants a player, his players work out. And every time Greer wants a player, not so much. And so I'm hoping that because it went with some physical linebackers that have a history of playing in the cold, with Walker. And so I'm hoping that they kind of go with that route. And Brooks too.
I don't know if I have your confidence in McDaniel picking players, but
more confident in his vision of players.
I will say this: I do think McDaniel has a vision.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
do think. What's that?
I don't think Greer does.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, we could. That's a whole nother show. But I do believe McDaniel has a vision, and I honestly think last year's team, the 2023 team, was really close to what McDaniel wanted to do.
Mhm.
It's a shame that he couldn't keep it a little bit more together. The salary cap and in salaries and stuff like that really kind of prevented him from doing that. So I'm interested to see what the tweak is this year. And like we've been talking about, I'm hoping it's a little bit more physicality. Like you said, they're never going to be a 3 yards in a cloud of dust type team, right? They're never going to be a 60% run team.
Right.
They're going to be the 65% pass. It makes the most sense to do that when you have Hill and Waddle.
And the rules dictate that.
You want them with the ball in their hands as much as possible. They're your two best weapons. All right. If Achane stays healthy, he can be a third. And I like the idea of him on the field with Hill and Waddle. When Hill and Waddle back everything up, you throw it to Achane underneath. I would really like to see Achane develop as a slot type wide receiver.
He has experience doing it.
I would really like to see them use his ability in that field a little bit more. You line them up in the backfield, you shift them to the slot, and if they got a linebacker on them, you just start eating. You know what I mean? And
I'll take that all day. I'll take that matchup.
Exactly. All right. Figure out how to get him a mismatch in open space in a pass route that's not a running back type route. Right. Make him run an option route against the linebacker, 8 yards downfield. All right.
Yeah. I like that idea.
Yeah. I want to see that a little bit more, but if they can get the ability to get a little bit more physicality out of their first running back, let's go. Let's have some fun.
That would be fun. And I think with going to wrap up here in a minute. Izukama is a little bit of an X factor in a sense where I'm not like banking on him for anything. But I do think he has some tools that they like a Cordero Patterson kind of thing. But I don't think there's anything special. Like he's going to be like, oh my God, he has an amazing year at all. But I think if they use him right, I think there could be some options for creating some mismatches out of the backfield and stuff. But Achane, when they drafted him, I really saw like a James White and how New England used him, and I'm like, if they could use him in that role, or how Kamara was using New England or New Orleans, that would be perfect.
Yeah, if he can be baby Kamara, or if he can be baby Marshall Faulk, something like that. I'm not comparing him to those guys. I just kind of want that role.
Yeah.
Okay. Where you're dictating matchups on the field and trying to put the defense in a bind.
Yeah.
And they're already in somewhat of a bind with Hill and Waddle. But if you can exploit that third one, if you could, like Marshall Faulk had Isaac Bruce and Torrey Holt out there. Okay. And you put Marshall Faulk in that slot, and all Kurt Warner had to do is like linebacker, yes. Safety, yes. Cornerback, no. But if it's cornerback on them, that means somebody else is eating on the outside.
That means there's a
Yeah, exactly. Okay. So let's go. Let's start playing some matchups in this offense as opposed to just a timing based passing game.
Put this in perspective. Marshall Faulk brought back memories. His last year with the Colts, Peyton Manning's rookie year, he had 86 receptions. Then it was 87, 81, 83, and 80. On top of having 324 rushes, 253, 253, 260, 212. So he was over 300 touches, 498 touches. And he was the back. He was that stud at receiver and running back.
So I take you back in a way back machine. All right.
Oh boy.
The first NFL training camp that I went to as a coach was the Indianapolis Colts training camp, Marshall Faulk's rookie year.
Oh
Okay.
man.
I'm standing on the sidelines watching them practice. Okay. And Marshall Faulk is just so smooth and so slick, and he's fast as hell. And afterwards, we're in a meeting with the Indianapolis coaches running back, and somebody, I don't remember who, but somebody said, "Man, Marshall Faulk is fast." And the running back coach looked at us, this group of coaches, and he goes, "On AstroTurf, he's invisible." I'll never forget that. And
Well, that's true though. He seriously.
He was so good. He was so good.
But he was big too. He was 5'10", but he's 211. So he had the size. He was just an unfair running back, like Jonathan Taylor, but even more athletic. Like it's just stupid unfair.
He was stupid unfair.
But so to wrap up, I really think I do like Achane and the role he's in. I like the explosiveness of the player, and I think he offers a lot of playmaking. But like you said, we need that stud back. And my take from all this, we need to get more physical. We need to get more physical outside. I think Brian Thomas helps us with that. Who knows? Maybe Izukama can help that. Johnny Smith, I do also think helps with that as well. And I hope that's the direction they're going, is to get more physical, because that's the one thing that is holding this team back. We can have a discussion about quarterback and all those other things, but the one thing I think is going to continue to hold this team back is the physicality of this offense in general. And that's my take on everything. So what is your hope for this draft next week and this offseason? And what do they
it is that. I'm hoping for a more physical running back. I'm hoping for a more physical wide receiver in the blocking game. And again, it's got to translate to cold weather. We have to figure out December and January games. It's 2 years in a row now in the McDaniel system that we basically, come up short, in December and January. All right. There's a reason for that. The game, is as much as I hate to be an old school guy, the game does change when the weather changes. And you got to be able to adapt to it. If you're not a dome team, if you're not going to be playing all the games in Miami at that time of year, you have to get a little bit more physical. And I think the last 2 years have shown us that. So that's what I'm hoping for. I'm hoping for a running back. I'm hoping for a big wide receiver that can block.
And you know what? They'll look back at all the teams that have won Super Bowls in the past. They found a run game. The Packers had a run game during that run. The Giants had run games. The Patriots found run games. So the New Orleans Saints is a perfect example of a team that's heavy-duty passing that had no problem running the ball to wrap games up. And
you have to have a little bit of physicality. You got to be able to win different ways. You got exactly. And if you want to be a championship team, you got to be able to win different ways. And Miami's, it's just too narrow right now. We need to widen it out. That's all. That's what I'm saying.
So, with that said, Greg and I don't think that the third option needs to be a wide receiver. We think it needs to be a running back. But we do think that adding physicality on the outside is a big help regardless. With that said, the draft is next week. Next Friday. We're not going to be doing a show. We're not going to be doing OT next Friday night. We'll definitely do one later on to discuss the draft and how we think it went down. Maybe we could do one a week after or something. But that's it for us, guys. We appreciate it so much. Enjoy the draft next week.
Yes,
until next time, fins up.